In today's video, you're going to learn in 3 key areas from tee to green where knowing your wrist angles is going to save you strokes. So we've been fortunate to capture a number of really good putters in 3D. One thing that we learn when we're comparing what they do with what the rest of us do is the pros don't really change the pitch of the club compared to the rest of us changing the pitch of the club throughout the stroke. It has a big influence on how you putt.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's something that I'm working on in my stroke and realize that this was happening, but not in the tour player's stroke. It's kind of a light bulb went on. It's like, I've never thought about the putting stroke in this way before. You know, when we think about wrist movement and putting, it's usually we're trying to lock in this motion, right?
Yeah, we think of the putter moving in this kind of plane towards and away from the target.
And that's important too, right? You don't see a lot of good putters doing that. So that's one aspect of the stroke that we always will look at. Well, now as we've studied more and more really good strokes, there's another element to the wrist motion that's very important. And what Mike was saying is absolutely correct. It's this motion as you're making your stroke back and through. So I could be perfectly still with my flexion-extension motion, but as I make this putter go back and through, if I'm pitching this in any way, you can see how in my particular stroke, I pitch it under a little bit, pitch it down, I end up hitting toe balls. And some of you may lower the handle some and pitch the putter that way. All that being said, the putter won't arrive at the ball with a flush bottom here. Your lie angle is in a bad spot.
Well, and as soon as you start changing the lie angle, right, the face starts to point in different places, and that's the key for why this is damaging the putting strokes.
Yeah, so not only does it affect where you hit it on the sweet spot, what Mike's saying is if there's a loft here on this putter, right?
Whichever putter has loft, yep.
If I start tipping this, obviously it's exaggerated, now that loft is pointed over there in the corner of the room and not straight at the camera.
Now, what you were demonstrating there with like coming in like this or like that, no one does it to that extreme. That change in pitch of the shaft is so subtle that golfers, like you said, we're focused on this plane of motion and we lose track of this plane of motion because of the subtlety to it. But when you're affecting 2-3 degrees of where that putter face is pointing, now you're talking about making a putt or missing a putt.
Yeah, for 10-footer, it's make and miss.
And when we've had guys do this in their putting stroke, they'll be let's say they have whatever this angle here is, 30 degrees, and they change it to 34 at impact or 28 at impact. That's the difference between making and missing a putt.
Yeah, and you need to know what should happen. It's like these big concepts that help us understand how to make good strokes and good swings. So the way to try to feel that as you're working on your putting stroke, yes, you can keep these fairly locked in because like we said, we don't want to be adding too much loft this way. But the feeling is you're kind of locking that lie angle in that you start with. Right? So if I take this putter back, I'm trying to avoid any motion that up and down action in the wrist. So I'm feeling like I'm locking that plane in, whatever that is, and holding that steady all the way back and through. And you're going to see an improvement in how you roll the ball.
Right. So that's number one, is understanding that chances are, unless you're an exceptionally good putter, you're going to have some deviation there. Okay. And then locking that in so there's no deviation will also help these wrist angles that everybody's working on, the flexion extension, the cupping and bowing. So you think of a Steve Stricker stroke, right? Yeah. Really down, locks that angle in, and he has very little movement out of that.
He'd be the extreme of that.
When we work on your stroke, right, when you don't lock that angle in, you see more variation here. When you lock that angle in, everything starts to work really well. So knowing that is the first part of fixing that. And videotape yourself. Did people say videotaping?
No, but that's fine.
Am I dating myself?
Yeah,
Video yourself making putting strokes and really put the camera on your hand so you can notice any of that. Or our preferred method is get a hack motion. The training you're going to get from that, not only in the putting, we're going to show you in the rest of the swing, is going to be super valuable to you. All right, so now we got our wedges in hand, and this is the next area where we see a lot of golfers struggling with wrist angle. I think most golfers understand what kind of a bump and run is, a low lofted pitch shot that runs more than it carries. Where we see golfers struggle at is in the more of the standard pitch shot, where it's kind of at least carrying as much as it's rolling or carrying more than it's rolling and being able to stop it.
It's kind of like no man's land for a lot of amateurs. A lot of amateurs can hit the bump and run, and then they try to use that everywhere.
Right.
But if you got a soft pitch shot over a bunker to a little bit of a short side, it's not really a flop shot. You just need kind of a stock pitch, mid-height, with a little bit of spin on it, nothing too fancy, they start trying to employ that same kind of shut-faced low shot and have to try to scoop it up in the air, and it's usually disaster. You end up in the bunker.
What's the common thing we see for these pitch shots? Now, these aren't chips, we'll call them pitch shots.
Yeah, so do you want me to show what we see in the golf schools with
Yes.
some of our guys? So we go through a short game presentation. We have a short game system on the website, and we kind of go through that in the schools that we do down here in Orlando.
And this would be our number 2 in the short game system.
Yeah, 1 is the lower shot, and this is the number 2, and this is where kind of the wheels start falling off a little bit at first. So what most of the golfers will do that come in, they'll set up, basically ball kind of middle, because they know they got to get it up a little. They don't want to play it back. But they'll employ kind of the same backswing where they keep the club face pointed at the ball too much.
Kind of hooded, right?
Yeah.
Because they know they want to bring it back to square.
Yeah.
So they kind of hood it. So what you're doing there with the hack motion, and we'll show you the data on the screens, you're actually closing your wrist in the backswing.
Yeah,
Or your forearm.
Rotating it closed and flexing it.
Right.
So it's a double whammy as far as keeping it shut. So if I want to get that ball up in the air, that's when you see guys kind of hanging back and trying to scoop it at the last second instead of maintaining the loft on this club all the way through.
Okay, that's what we don't want to do for these shots.
Right.
What do we want to do?
Yeah, so, a lot of the short game is a setup. Right. So real quick, feet close together, ball middle to slightly forward, face a little bit open, just a stock kind of setup for a pitch. And what I want to see, we'll just talk about the lead wrist, is that the lead wrist or arm rotates and the toe goes up in the air. And you maintain the cup in your lead wrist. Right. That will get the club kind of working up the shaft plane. The toe will be up in the air. The lead wrist have a little bit of cup, and the forearm has rotated so the back of my hand is pointed over at Mike instead of towards the ground.
So you're saying if I've got a flat lead wrist, I don't want to bow that because now the club gets way off and shut.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I'm rotating, I want to make sure I'm adding a little bit of cup, and you can even set up with a little bit of cup. But it's that combination of movement that keeps the club neutral and preserves the loft that we can use to hit these soft pitch shots over whatever, bunkers, rough, whatever.
I mean, wrist angles so important around the greens because you don't have a lot of time to make up for a bad move.
Exactly.
I mean, you have very little time to get this club back in some kind of position to hit short game shots, and I think that's why the pitch, this kind of 15 to 30 yards, really is a tough shot for a lot of people, especially when they got to get it up in the air a little. So, yeah, just feel like that toe is going up in the air. You're maintaining the loft by keeping the lead wrist a little bit cupped or extended, and let that forearm rotate a little bit. And then from there, you just kind of let the club drop on the ball and go into your finish.
So let's talk about that aspect of it. So you're not trying to come through like this, right? Not for these shots.
Not at all. And the way we teach this, and this is kind of interesting too, if someone was to think about what happens, right? So if I take it back, I got the club up off the ground, a little bit of wrist cock, right, in this direction. Well, coming down, if I didn't do anything else with my body, I'm just uncocking this club and then going up with my body and letting this wrist go into extension now. Right. So I'm not trying to put it here, set it, and hold it by any means. You have to kind of let this club swing. That drill with that alignment rod sticking out of the end would be terrible for this shot. So I'm setting it, toe up, dropping it on the ground or the ball, and then coming up in the finish. And you can see the butt of the club kind of stays close to me, and the back of my left wrist is extended, and the face is kind of pointed more to the back towards me instead of rolled toward the ground.
Exactly. One of the coolest parts about this job is being able to see what these great players do, kind of look behind the curtain. One of the key differences is how these great players are rotating this forearm, not only in the backswing, but especially in the downswing, compared to maybe what it looks like, because again, there's rotation involved. There's a lot of camouflage in how that part of the body moves. And then when you compare it to the theories that we hear other golfers trying to do, when we see guys come in for lessons, they're trying to stop that movement in an effort to maybe rotate the body more. Now, we've captured some of the highest rotators playing the game, body rotation in the game. This isn't not rotating either.
Yeah, it really is, and there's a lot more of this motion than people even realize, right?
Or even looks like on video.
And with something like hack motion, we can actually measure the motion and see what the great players do. So basically, we have a lot of people that come in for golf schools that think that this lead arm should kind of rotate under, right? and keep the face kind of shut because they have open face issues down by the ball. That's a lot of golfers.
Or not even shut. We'll see a lot of golfers who will cock it, which cups the wrist, but they don't, hands in, club out. They just don't want to let this angle go.
Call it a reverse roll, right?
Everybody has to open the face in the backswing.
Right. So
everybody.
Mike is right. You see this reverse roll here in an effort to keep it, less open, and then they 9 times out of 10 kind of flop it open.
Right.
And then that motion there leads to being laid off, and then they pull on it.
The worst time to open the face is at the top.
Yeah, that late kind of laid off flop, a lot of times, I'm not saying everybody,
yes,
but a lot of amateurs will pull on that club and make it tip out over.
I love the analogy you use all the time. It's just going from address to shaking your hand.
The left-hand handshake puts you in such a perfect spot.
We've done this in lessons for years now, and no one, if you're, put your left hand out so I can handshake it. No one has ever gone this way, no one's ever come this way. It's just instinctive. Okay, right there.
Yeah.
That's the amount that you want.
Yeah.
Not more complicated than that.
All right, so continuing on from the handshake,
Yep.
right? That lead forearm just continues to rotate up to the top.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Now it's important to notice that it's not the whole arm. Okay, so my forearm didn't move. I didn't rotate my forearm, I rotated my whole arm. That's where we see guys get in trouble, because that will take the club and do that. That's not great.
Yeah, you're rotating this whole wedge here.
Yeah.
To lay it off and
so
open.
You can do that again. You can leave the elbow pointing somewhere at the ground.
Yep.
And you've rotated the forearm.
So I can go.
So when you do both of those, that's where you get in trouble.
Yep, great point. So that lead arm's gonna go through the shake hand spot. You don't need to, piece it together.
Right.
It just flows through there up to the top.
Yep.
And I think this is where people start to get confused. The correct way to do this, or to think about this, is to rotate it all the way through to here.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a handshake now to the target.
Yeah. So
or
we used
thumbs
to call
up
it.
to the target.
Yeah, we used to call it a hitchhiker's drill. It would be, put your thumb up here at a 45, basically.
Right.
And then I'm going to swing that all the way through, so it's a 45 over here.
And this is where that kind of transition downswing part is where we see the most trouble for golfers, because it makes sense to think, okay, I'm going to simplify this golf swing. I'm going to bow my wrist, get a really strong club face, get everything where I want it. Now I can just turn through the ball. Even the players that look like they do that on tour are coming nowhere close to doing that. One, the body rotation doesn't rotate enough to close the face. And two, there's a ton of this still happening.
In reality, the really good players have a lot more motion through this area than you would think.
Yes, it's surprising, because when we try to do those swings and then we look at the data, compare those swings to the data, it's night and day difference amount of rotation. Players who are 55, 60 degrees open even, that we have data on with the body, are still having to rotate this left forearm a good bit.
Yeah, and all that speed's got to go somewhere.
Right.
You're just trying to hold this off. It's A, not possible, because you're still going to end up doing it. And B, if you do it like you're trying to do it, a lot of times you're going to leave the face wide open.
And then you've got to get yourself way out of ranges as far as wrist move. Like it snowballs to having to do so many outlier movements to match up so many outliers, that if you don't have the physical gift to do that and you didn't grow up doing that, good luck trying to learn that in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. It's just not in the cards.
No.
Right? And with a lot of golfers that try that, it's physically the most difficult way to get the club down. It doesn't have to be that difficult. We love using, we have gears. Gears does all this stuff, but you guys can't go to the range with gears.
No.
Right? This is a way to take this three-dimensional movement, a very complicated movement, very fast-moving part of the golf swing, and literally have it in your back pocket or your front pocket or your golf bag. We've got a link down below that's going to take you to how we train this using specifically hack motion. The guys have been great. They're going to give us a little discount on hack motion that you guys will have, but it's going to show you how we like to use it, because if you hone in on these 3 areas of your wrist angles in the golf swing, you're going to shoot lower scores. It's like you're just going to have a better golf swing and you're going to shoot lower scores.